Welcome to MassReform. My name is John Norris. Today we're going to take a look at Massachusetts and how overrides, underrides, and exclusions work. To start, we have to look at Prop 2.5, also known as Mass General Law 59, Section 21C. What Prop 2.5 does is it creates two specific mechanisms on how towns can levy taxes. The first one is called the levy ceiling. This is how much a town can levy in taxes against its citizens based upon the fair value of the property in the town. It sets it at 2.5%. So, for example, if your town is worth $100 million in property, then they can raise $2,500,000 in levy taxes. The second part is called the levy limit. This is how much your levy can raise from year to year. This is calculated by the Department of Revenue and is mostly based on new growth. But cities and towns do have a way to change the levy rate. These are called overrides, underrides, and exclusions. Before we get into the specifics on how they operate, let's talk about how people can get them onto the ballot in the first place. With the exception of an underride, an override and exclusions need to go through your Board of Selectmen, your city or town council. An underride can also be put on a referendum ballot by them, or it can be done by a local petition by the people. When any of these are done by a Board of Selectmen, city or town councilors, an over or underride needs a majority vote of the board in order to get passed and put on a referendum vote. For an exclusion, it takes 2/3. After that, all of them need a simple majority vote by the town in order to go into effect. Okay, so let's go over the different types of ways that a town can affect its levy. Let's start with the override. This is one of the most common ones that people know. An override is a permanent increase in the tax levy, and it increases by 2.5% each year after its acceptance. The first year it has to be earmarked for a specific purpose, but in subsequent years that money just becomes indistinguishable and goes into the general fund. This is most often used by a town or a city whenever they have a shortfall in their annual operating budget, and they need an ongoing permanent source of income. A levy limit underride does pretty much the same thing except in the opposite direction. It lowers the annual levy. If an underride is voted in after an annual budget, it would cause the town or city to make a cut in their expenditures in order to make up the difference, unless they have a significant unused levy capacity. So overrides and underrides are a permanent way to change your tax levy, but there are a couple of ways to do it temporarily. These are called exclusions. The first one is a capital outlay expenditure exclusion. This is a way for a community to raise their tax levy for 1 year in order to raise a dollar amount so they can do a capital project or a capital purchase. This way they avoid long-term costs such as going out to bond. Also, a capital exclusion can only be used to fund certain purposes, which are specified in Mass General Law Chapter 44, Section 7 and 8. After 1 year, the debt rolls off. Or in other words, the levy goes back to the way that it was. But sometimes a capital project or a capital purchase is too large for just a 1-year levy. In these cases, towns can use what's called a debt exclusion. It's very similar to a capital exclusion. It's used to do a capital purchase or a capital project, but instead of being levied for 1 year, the levy is put across many years. This is done by a town going out to bond. They borrow money, and they use a debt exclusion to pay the debt service costs. Once the bond is paid off, the levy drops back down. There is one more way that a town can raise money for a specific purpose. This is called a Special Purpose Stabilization Fund, and it's very similar to a debt exclusion. After it's been approved by a 2/3 vote, it goes out for referendum on the town. If it gains a majority vote by the town, it goes into effect. The levy is raised and revenue goes into the fund. From that point on, every year, the selectmen, town council, or city council can vote to continue, defer, lower, or resume the account. Like an override, the additional tax will continue year after year without a town-wide or a city-wide referendum vote, and the amount available to be raised will increase by 2.5%. However, like an exclusion under Proposition 2.5, the levy limit increase need not be permanent. It can be discontinued in any year. So, in summary, there are two ways to affect your levy permanently. An override will increase it, and an underride will decrease it. If you have something in town that you need to fund for a short period of time, you can do a capital exclusion. If you have something in town you want to fund then it's very expensive, you can do a debt exclusion. And lastly, you can create a special stabilization fund for a specific purpose that can be controlled by the city council, town council, or selectmen after it's been voted in. This is a MassReform production. My name is John. If you've enjoyed what you heard, please go to our website and consider becoming an educational supporter. We are a federally registered 501c3, so every donation is a tax deduction. You can find us at www.massreform.org.